Three, three, two, one. Welcome to the show. Today, we'll be discussing getting old. Why getting old? Because it sucks, and especially for men once we're getting a little older. So, one of the questions that I wrote here on my notepad was why men have a hard time getting old. And I'm gonna the list could be is really long, but I just broke it down to I think I have seven points. Kind of, it's more like reference notes, but I'm gonna call them points just to keep my mind on track, which I'm already not being great at, as you could tell. But why do men have a difficult time with getting old? And some of the obvious ones is that we're just not young anymore, right? We remember how we used to be in our 20s as a teenager. If we were athletic, just how we felt, how it was different. Um, and it's just one of those easy ones, right? Where you're just your physical the physical activities that you will be able to do. And then when you're in your teens, you go into your 20s. I mean, you could kind of still do the same thing, but then you start going into your 30s and 40s, and depending who you are. I mean, I'm 40 years old and I feel great. I don't really have any pain on my joints. I work out now consistently. So for my age at 40, I feel like probably how I would have felt at 30, I guess, if I would have started working out. But who knows, right? I could never know that because that's in the past. But um, but once you start getting into that 30-year-old and 40-year-old and 50-year-old, things just become more difficult every decade. So you start becoming reminiscent about 10 years ago. Like, wow, 10 years ago I didn't feel this pain and I could get up from the couch, but now I can't. And a lot of that stuff has to do with just keeping active for the majority of people that do experience this, kind of progressive body breakdown. Is that they don't have they're not active. So as the 30s and 40s and 50s, those 30 years right there are they take a toll, and you see it in a lot of people. Some people tell me they're 50, and I'm like, wow, you look like you're 60. And I got that myself. I was for the longest time when I was 35 years old. Someone said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 35." And they were like, well, yeah, wow, we thought you were like 43, 44. And that was a gut check. I even remember going home and just looking in the mirror. Well, first I got in the car and looked in the rearview mirror, and I even brought the other one down that's in front of me and kind of just looked from all angles and started noticing all the wrinkles and my hairstyle and everything. And I was like, wow, I do look old. So it was for me, it was one of those things which I was a gut check for me, just knowing that, yeah, you know what, I probably look super old. And it was because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was smoking cigarettes, and my diet was horrible. Stress level was through the roof. Smoking weed, just not taking care of myself. Not that any one of those things in particular, and even weed at the end, is bad. It's just a recap of my health. And I was getting sick constantly, so it was a mess. So I know how easy it could be if you're not taking care of yourself for you to just start sliding. And once you start sliding, it gets quick. I mean, you could deteriorate pretty quick. And it's taken me 2 years, a little less than 2 years, but close to 2 years of consistent effort. And again, I think I said this in another podcast, but for the last 8 months now, 9 months, I've been extremely dedicated. Like right before the COVID thing happened, and that month, the month or two of COVID, where I was when we were all in quarantine, or a good portion of the country, and especially here in Vegas. A lot of people that worked along the strip got furloughed, but and so did I. And when that like I said, 2 months, I went and did some. I think it was a 300 push-ups a day, and I just became so fucking just super conscious about achieving a goal. Now I was working out and I was seeing results, but nothing where I focused it and I just centered every ounce of energy into getting healthier, getting better, eating a little bit better. My diet is still horrible and it's one of the hardest things that I'm dealing with right now, but I'm trying to get a nice balance of it because I also have kids, but and I'm a big proponent that kids need that fat that a lot of healthy parents are eating, but you need that, the kids need that fat to grow, just to grow healthy. And once they get to, over 18 or 17, 18, 19, they could make their choice, because at that point they would have enough reference where they went to the doctor, they grew up healthy, they balanced it out, hopefully, because it's not always that perfect, but that would be the case. But anyways, without digressing again too much, um, just physical activity and the lack of it could make your body break down a lot quicker than, and then you look back and say, wow, how I what I could have done in my 40s, what I could have done in my 50s, what I could have done in my 30s or whatever, 20s. You just kind of, that's what getting old, I was going to say that's what getting old means, duh. But it's just one of the reasons that we find it hard as men, because we just can't, we reminisce too much. We go back to the past, to the glory days, to the heydays. That's why sports are so men centric, I guess. Uh, our team could suck, but we'll remember a Super Bowl from like 1962 until they won one a couple of years ago. And yes, I'm talking about the Chiefs. Actually, this year, it's difficult, I mean, again, for me, I think right now I could go out and play basketball even probably better than I could 10 years ago, because I smoked a lot of cigarettes. And now that I'm not smoking cigarettes, my wind's back. I feel my lungs, so I think I could go last, and I could shoot a pretty clean jump shot still. I was out there a couple of weeks ago because the weather's changing here in Vegas, so it's getting a lot cooler. So I could still get out there. So, but especially for men that used to be athletic, they used to be in sports, and because of marriage, kids, the grind, work, just low maintenance, no maintenance on ourselves, and no self improvement, and we let ourselves go, that it becomes even that much more difficult, because we know our potential. We reached our potential. We reached the height. And I remember being in the track team and being able, one of the best in my high school or whatever. You have these kind of memories, and then obviously, well, maybe you were really good at golf or tennis, depending on what your high school had. Mine was kind of okay. Looking back at it now, in the time I was like, wow, this ghetto ass high school didn't have all these sports, but they had quite a few, enough to keep me interested in not doing stupid shit. Um, but I've noticed that with men that were athletic, it becomes that much more difficult when you get older to kind of accept getting older because of that. You reminisce a lot, and it's difficult. I mean, who wouldn't? And another one thing I wrote down was, obviously, romance and performance with women. It goes down, and it's one of those leading cause of depression among men, because once that goes, it's a lot of men question themselves. And even though statistically, I think there's like a myth that old people aren't getting busy or whatnot. But I actually wrote this for later on in the podcast, but for whatever reason we're here. and this myth about like grandpa and grandma not getting down, and it was like around 46% or something of 60 to 80-year olds that are still active. That's pretty disgusting when you think about it, but we're going to be grandparents too, and we're hopefully going to be in that 45, 46%. So around 50% almost. That's pretty darn good if you ask me for that age range. um but when it does happen to men, it could be, I mean, men have taken their lives because of it, so it's nothing to make joke out of it. Even though, I mean, but it does define a lot of people in their mind as far as what it is to be a man, and if that's the core function, just in evolution, if you believe in that standard. If you don't have the equipment, or if it can't work, then you're not. What's the point in being here? Obviously, if you've reached an age of 80 years old, you would think you would have a full, fulfilling life and looking back at no regret. But I think we're all smart enough to understand that that is not always the case, and it's why a lot of the motivation, self-help, and people are looking for answers, just because they're it's in this fast-paced environment, this fast-paced world. I mean, what it's just too much. So I don't even know if organized religion has a chance anymore with the evolution of technology. That's a podcast for another day. But yeah, that's a definite big one up there. I mean, it's not that, and it's all individualized. I mean, it could be super important to some, and that was my point. To me, it isn't that important now, as I mean, it all works and stuff, but looking at how much knowledge I'm gaining, personal growth, personal development, it's not becoming as important. Even though, as I say that, I could relapse tomorrow and completely go the other way. But it's a daily thing. It's a daily reminder. It's a daily standard to keep my mind on the mission. But for some, the lack of performance and the decline in that active lifestyle with women is a definite, is hard, is a hard pill to swallow. And just think about it right now as a man, hearing this. If if that happened to you, how would you feel? And I would venture to say around 68, 70% of everybody would be like, yeah, it would mess me up. So if it would happen to you now and you're 21, 41, 32, 50, no matter what, if it happens to you in 80, it's going to still kind of, I mean, I would hope not as much, but I'm assuming it would still do something to you, kind of affect you in a negative way. I mean, another one is work, retiring, not having a mission, not having an agenda, not waking up, going to do the grind, whatever it might have been. Maybe you were at a I mean, the only kind of thing, I don't know if they have them here, since we all get exported cars, but it's like back in the days when Ford, and you used to work in a Ford company, and you would reach a certain age, and they gave you the watch, they gave you the retirement, your retirement, they gave you that good off, and you were off to enjoy life. But that was the dream that we were sold. But reality is that a lot of men, when they retire, when they stop working, when they stop having a purpose, they die within 5 years of retirement. That is super scary to most men. And I've had plenty of conversation with men on this subject to understand that, yup, that's one of the biggest fears of them, and they're close to retiring, and but they remember a story, or they knew someone, and within 3 to 5 years is done because they lost motivation. And it kind of hits to the other point when the in the conversations that I've had, and I've told them, I'm like, were they healthy, were they active? And a lot of the time, these guys weren't even healthy at work. That was at work was literally the only active thing they did. They would go back home, either just sit on the couch, not do anything, just eat, go to, take a shower, go to sleep, provide for the family, basically. but no self maintenance, no self love, no self care. And of course, once that exercise went away, everything else just compounded. Now they're not doing anything. They're just, and maybe some of them, depression set in with the lack of purpose, drive, and direction, which is, ideal for men to have a purpose, to have a vision, to have a drive, to have a direction in their lives. And once you have to retire, or not even have to retire, once you do retire, you kind of don't have you never mapped it out. And a lot of people end up taking jobs again, mediocre jobs, just to stay active, because they don't know what to do, so they'll just get another job. You find other people that go and do it right, and get stressed down, go enjoy the world. If you planned it out right, obviously, in the economy that we're in today, I don't know if many people are on that boat anymore with the uncertainties with the COVID-19, and the devastation that it's done, to America. But without getting too much in the news, yeah, so it's probably not the same, but yeah, definitely now, even now when men retire, it still affects them in a super negative way, just because it takes away, like I said, that purpose in life, I guess, for some. Sadly, I don't want to say like it's a bad thing or a good thing, because I don't want to be like, oh, you just worked a mundane life. If you provide it for your family, and you raise some beautiful kids, and you enjoy, they love you, and the love, and that's a beautiful thing also. It doesn't have to be, this pursuit of the ultimate, best life ever dream. I'm gonna be, the best dreams, even though you should go after your dreams. But knocking anybody that just loves to be a family man is completely wrong, and I see that a lot too. And I know I'm digressing a little bit to that point, but like, it's okay to want to have a family. It's okay to not want to continue on with dreams that, yeah, they were important, but if the new dream is to love your wife, to love your kids, to be a family man, hey, kudos to you. And it shouldn't be frowned upon. It doesn't have to be always being the best, producer, and being the best rapper, being the best architect, and I'm gonna rise up to be the CEO of this company. And it's great. Like I said, have that competitive nature. It's what men do, but it's not bad to understand that dreams change. And just because dreams change for some doesn't mean we have to knock them as men, because it takes a lot to be a family man, what it should be. Not what we've been told, not what society wants it to be now, like what it should be. But anyways, back on point. So work, that whole retirement, it takes that path away from them. Another thing is friends and family passing away. Sadly, that's just life. And as we get older, some of that stuff will start becoming a normal situation, just because of the age. And I mean, I still haven't really felt that personally in life, and I'm knocking on wood as I speak. I don't know if you heard that, but I did, because I don't want to bring that kind of juju on me. But I know people that have experienced it throughout their whole life, but for the normal people, and some, wait, before I continue, for some, they don't experience it until later on in life, because they're blessed before whatever reason not to have experienced that, or cursed, depending on your point of view. For the majority of people, as you get older, you start losing friends, you start losing families. And for a lot of people, first, and foremost is our parents, and then, uncles, and then, friends and sisters and brothers and cousins or whatever, and just keeps on going on to ultimately us. And it could be us it could be in any order, obviously, but for the majority, that's the way kind of the progression is, depending, of course, on family and size and whatnot. But that's difficult, to know. And it doesn't have to be because you see them dying, just the thought of it. It could be anyone. I don't want to just throw a name out there, but let's say a celebrity that right now, as you're hearing my voice, they're sitting in the lap of luxury. He has his four, kids with his beautiful wife, with his dog, and he'll sit there and it'll come. They'll just the vision will come, and realization that one day he won't be there. That one day this will be gone. They'll grow up, they'll move out, and your mind takes you, but it definitely takes you to that point, to the extreme where nothing is permanent. And as you get older, like I said, you'll see your son marry, or your daughter get married, divorce, hopefully not, but kids, grandkids. And as you get older, life happens, and all that dynamic, and then all of a sudden with what you grow up, you start just experiencing death. And again, it doesn't have to be when you're experiencing that death, just the thought of what is coming, of death and the progression of life. It doesn't have, and I use this celebrity just to explain or to use that as an example, that it goes even, you could have the world given to you, or not given to you, but you could have the world in your hands. It's no different than the person living in a 2-bedroom apartment with his small little family. The same thought is the same. The fear of, these people won't be here for long. And of course, it's just a momentary thing, because a logical question would be like, well, why won't more people change? Well, again, it's just momentary. It just takes you there real quick. But just the thought of it's just our mind understanding that just giving us that slap in the face, saying, hey, yeah, but this is impermanent. So we slap out within a couple of seconds, and we just go, and we rely on habit. So we're creatures of habit, if you don't know. So it doesn't really matter what we think, especially if it's just a split second, just a couple seconds where it takes you to, hey, this isn't permanent, boom, and you're back. You're like, whoa, that was weird, but whatever. I'm going to enjoy my daughters, right now, but you kind of then just go back on habit. So that's why people don't really, change on these visions, as if some people call them. It's just your mind slapping you and saying, "Hey, realize that this isn't for a long time." But it only happens for a couple seconds. But it's a scary thought at any age. I mean, you could tell your kids about your parents, or if you're parents and you tell your kids that you won't be around, they'll look at you crazy, like, "What do you mean? You're gonna live here forever?" When your friend, you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and maybe even your 50s and 60s, but your friend says, "Oh, I'm gonna pass away." So shut the hell up. Don't even talk like that. Just fucking, you're dumb. Whatever. Trying to keep it somewhat, even though I think I already cussed earlier on, but you don't like to joke around about. No one likes to joke about death. But it's something that, and we see it in culture. That's why death is so popularized now in 2020 and before. But as we've gone, I'm sure it's gonna even become more, popularized and stuff. But yeah, it's a scary notion, the notion of death. And again, for men, some men, not all, but some men that do devote themselves to their family in every class of life. It's difficult. It's difficult for your family, for your friends, for your loved ones. It's difficult, the process of getting older, and it could be something that, again, just affects men in a negative way. It could also, it should affect men in a positive way, to enjoy life, to don't take things for granted, to take life as it comes and be spontaneous, but have a plan and lead, to enjoy the fruits of life as you should. It's just not it's not facts. It's not what men do. Sadly, I wish it was, but we haven't gotten there yet, and we haven't even started to that kind of thinking. For the majority, just the thought of death and getting older, and that process is just uncomfortable. We'd rather not deal with it. You see it with the lack of wills being prepared, the lack of just stuff being done, even towards the end of life. Uh, just how we don't want to be bothered with the subject of death. But sadly, for most of us, or for most people, once you start hitting your 40s, 50s, and 60s, that's gonna become something that's gonna become normal. I mean, you could be odd normal. And I've heard stories where just everyone around a certain person lives for a long time, and but it always ends up the same way. It's just a period of time where just yeah, I hear it a lot, like in military, like the last of a certain platoon, or the last of a certain class in the military. And it's different. Obviously, there's love there. There's camaraderie there. You fought with someone. They're like brothers and sisters. So it's definitely painful. I'm not negating the pain at all. But for the most part, if I remember, and honest, I mean, I'll take that back. I think I've seen enough interviews where they're crying, and then they gather themselves a lot of the time, and continue the interview. But yeah, I'll take that back. No, I mean, I was gonna say they seem happy. Like, I remember the interviews and they were smiling, and they do smile, and they have, but that's just because they compose themselves. But you see them break down for that 5 seconds, and that's the true, honest, raw emotion. And yeah, I'll take that back. No matter in what facet, I think is just hard to grab with the idea of the people you love getting older and dying. Your friends and family, your buddies from high school, college, your exes, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins, ex flings from like high school, and the list goes on, and that starts taking a toll because you were around. You're that age. But again, take care of yourself. If you keep active and give yourself the best opportunity to live a lot longer, then do that, no matter at what age you are. I think I included two subjects. I had death as its own subject, but another thing men have a hard time with getting old is empty nest syndrome, and a lot of people associate that a lot with women, but men are just as affected from that uh, as women are, from men that stay obviously in a traditional marriage, man and woman marriage, and raising kids. When the kid leaves, the a lot of people, even in popular culture, associate that empty nest syndrome with the mom overreacting, crying, "Oh my God, my son is gone," and they end up getting like a dog to like calm her down or something. And the dad's always like, "Oh, I'm so glad he gets to go away because I'm gonna make my game room, and I'm gonna do this with his room, and blah blah blah." And I can't think of the shows off the top of my head. I think one's the '70s show. I think kind of did that joke, but I'm not 100% sure. There's a few shows and that portray the dad as just being super super ecstatic. And again, that's one of those myths out there. That's just not true. The same amount of men are affected from empty nest syndrome as women. So especially with young men having children and they're married and are going through life, their kids in kindergarten and starts moving up, and once they start hitting sixth grade and elementary school, and you start noticing and you start realizing they're getting older, they're gonna eventually want to do stuff and move out, and you're not prepared for it, and then it does happen, and it's one of the causes that lead men, and then not a really talked about cause, and it should be, because when just again, men devote as much into kids as women do. So of course, when you lose something, I mean, we see it in relationships when men break up. I mean, come on now. And I'll get into relationships, but come on now, go on YouTube and just come on now. So you can't associate one and not associate that same action to the other action. So, I mean, again, come on. So it's something that needs to be talked about more because a lot of men can use that conversation, especially when kids move off to college. Of course, men are proud for their boys to go off and be a man. Of course, they're proud of their little girl going off to college and achieving her dreams. Don't get me, there's always that. But again, parents and men devote a lot of the same attention that women do, and not all. A lot of men take that role for granted, which is a shame. To do that, it's one of those things that should be talked about a lot more than it is. I don't hear anybody talking about it. Because they associate that with women having that symptom, and I've heard the argument from some places that do. I don't really want to say talk about it because again, I don't hear anybody talk about it, but they try to make it the same with like, or they try to associate it with labor pains. And I'm just like, no, that's like a placebo effect. If I feel like I'm in pain or if I'm sick, I'm gonna feel that. And in some instances, because you cared so much, you start kind of embodying these kind of a pain. So it's not the same. When you just put that kind of effort into something, and that effort goes away, everything that you put into something, in this instance, your kids, and they go away, they get married, they go off and have a girlfriend and then a wife, and they move to across the country. Like they literally, a thing you loved moved, decided to move as far away from you in this example as possible. Talk about like, well, you couldn't go to college here, you couldn't go to college in the state. And of course, I'm joking in that. We're all proud as parents, no matter what it is, but it's definitely something that no one is looking forward to. And it's again one of the least talked about causes of male depression, but it's one of those things about depression that people don't talk about, especially with men that are in their kids' life. It doesn't always have to be traditional. I know I said that. I guess if you're a really, really involved parent and you're coming from divorce and you have like joint custody, or you're just an involved parent, uh, I haven't seen any numbers or studies, but I'm assuming, I can assume, I would say, that it can technically, without having numbers in front of me, uh, I guess lead to an empty net syndrome kind of a feeling, but I don't know. Again, I would be more inclined if you had joint custody and you share the kids pretty consistently, and you're super super involved like you should be in your kids' life. Then I could hear an argument for that one. But for the most part, for this argument, I'm only using it with parents that are together for what long, the whole length of their kids, as far as up to when they leave their house. Men suffer just as much from that depression as women, but it's not talked about. But it's also something especially when men have kids, is one of those things that we have a hard time with dealing with. We don't express it most of the time, but it's definitely something that is is in that little back burner that doesn't go away. And one of the not I don't I was gonna say last, but I was gonna say last but not least, it just sounded too cheesy before I said it. Um, but the last point I want to make, and it's definitely not the least important by all means, by any means, and but being alone, and it's not specific to men, but it affects men a lot more, especially with the divorce rates and whatnot in the way they are in the Western world, especially here in the United States. Men, the stories, and I think some podcasts have talked about it and devoted some of the or some time to a conversation about, and stories from that they've heard of men and their fear of dying alone. And I was looking for a story to kind of simulate that, but I think honestly, as men, that you could just, I think, in our gut, like I made fun of the whole thing with, if how men react to breakups, the majority of them, and the fear of being alone and dying alone. I know you hear a lot of popularized things like, "Oh my God, it's so dope," and certain movements that try to express that that's okay, and it might be for some. If it's for you, cool. I'm not saying whether it's good or not. I'm just implying that there is certain things, but for the majority of men, it's a big fear in their minds, and something that they have to live with the fact that because they might have a breakup, maybe don't not really good with girls, maybe they got a divorce, whatever the situation might be, they're thinking, oh, now I'm gonna die alone, and it could be. I've had conversations when I was younger with men that were talking like this when we were in our 20s. So I'm assuming that that's still the case with people in their 20s. Now, if I'm wrong, I don't think I'm wrong. But being alone is something that, and most of the time you hear them after breaks. I'm always gonna be alone. No one's gonna love me. Why did she cheat on me? Blah 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 blah. Why did she break up with me? And we get that fear, right? Like we're gonna be alone. No one's gonna want us, and yada yada yada. But it's not really like that kind of lackadaisical with the yada yada yada, because a lot of men take their lives. A lot of men with that fear when the breakup happens, that fear that grabs onto them, like no one's gonna love me, and they hurt someone else or they hurt themselves, is something that is quite serious. And it's what makes just being a man and growing older just difficult. It just those ideas and the way society is going right now, it isn't making that any better, any easier, any more comfortable. If on the contrary, I think it's aggravating it. It's making it more difficult just to go through these processes. And this was just a short little list or points that I wanted to keep on track to definitely talk about, because it's important to understand these points, and to understand that it's okay as a man to feel this way, but to also start having that conversation about, yes, it gets old, it gets hard as we're getting older. So what are some things that we can do to make that process a whole lot better? And there's many podcasts already that have already talked about this or are talking about this, and I'm definitely going to talk about this in another podcast. But the only thing I'm gonna say, and I think I've said this a few times already, is stay active. It doesn't mean you have to go out to the gym and do all this crazy workouts when in your 50s and 60s and be an anomaly of human specimen. I'm not saying to do all that. What I am saying is stay healthy. Go out for an hour walk. Go out for a 30-minute walk. Go out for a light jog if you can. Do something every day, and it'll add up. The little things add up. And if you're having problems with whatever your doctor told you, whether it's cholesterol, whether it's your blood pressure, do the things that they're telling you. You know how hard-headed men are. Hey, if you keep on smoking, this will happen, and you keep on smoking. And I know how difficult certain things can be, and I'm not saying that it's that easy, but it should be that easy. And one of the things is that we all put on these, or one of the reasons that we don't, is we all put on this macho front, or we just don't talk about it. Oh, men don't talk about. No, no, no. It's not that. It's not that we can't do our own research. It's that we won't do our own research. So sometimes we have to force the information to people, or to yourself, is what I would rather say. You have to kind of force it on yourself, and that's what the YouTubes and the Googles and all the Facebooks and stuff like that. The fact that there's this knowledge out there that we could kind of fill our own gaps in is definitely it's good, but we it has to be done that way, because we won't do it on our own. You kind of have to stumble upon it. As many of them say, you have to have a breakup in there, and then you start realizing, hey, these are the things I should look for, and or how do I change myself in this aspect? And then you start dealing with some of the topics like getting old and being alone and financial freedom, blah blah blah, and the list goes on and on. And it should be something that we talk about earlier, and as opposed to someone being in 35 and figuring this out at 35. We could go into the father figures, and I'm going to talk. There's a podcast dedicated to that. The fact that that we a majority of men would have benefited a ton with men have staying if they had men in their lives, and that's not taking away from anything from the job that women did, raising those 90s kids, us 90s kids, I should say. It was a transition period, and I see that a lot with my generation. But anyways, I'm digressing too much. So that was just a short list about why men have a hard time with getting old. But I want to also kind of talk about the flip side of getting old, right? Because it's not all bad. I don't want to make it sound like it's all bad. And honestly, it's probably going to sound like that bad because for the most part, this list that I'm gonna go through is gonna go by pretty fast, and it's sad. I guess it shouldn't be sad. It's just that once you start, you can't start feeling better unless you realize that some of the things that are wrong, right? And I can't talk about the benefits of getting old if I wasn't realistic and saying, look, before I could talk about the benefits of getting old, you have to realize that the majority of people have a fear of getting old. It's an outlier for the people that say, oh, I'm actually looking forward to getting old. And I'm kind of a nerd, so at least I've seen a lot of fucking shows, at least if you want to call that being a nerd. Even though I have other things that could qualify me for being a nerd. But there was an episode, I think, of How I Met Your Mother, where Ted Mosby was talking to, I think it was Robin, and they were talking about aging. He was like, oh, I can't wait to get old, not do nothing, act senile at stores when I'm shoplifting. So it's pretty funny. But those people, and everybody thought that Ted Mosby was crazy, because that's the outlier, right? And a lot of people aren't looking to grow old. I think there was a poll, and it said that most people would choose between 20 and 30 years old as where they would want to stay young forever. I think that was the question. If you could stay young forever, what age would you be? And most of them kind of agreed that 20 to 30 age, that was where they wanted to be. And why is that? Because you were at your healthiest, your strongest, your youngest. You had a full, you still believed in life. Like most men don't believe in life, but there was just a different kind of a mentality there when you were in your 20s and 30s. So, like I said, I would be dishonest to just go off and be like, oh, I want to keep this positive and talk about the benefits of being of having this, getting old. You get to pick up younger chicks. Oh yeah. And it is one of the benefits, and I'll get to them. But let's get into it. So one of the things is like why men shouldn't fear getting old is age doesn't defy you, right? So if you already know that in your head that age doesn't define me, you could start achieving greater things. So just because they say that a 50-year-old can't do this doesn't mean that it can't be done. And if you want to set your mind to doing such things, then go do it. Age doesn't have to defy you. Oh, most 60-year-olds aren't running marathons. Guess what? Well, I'm not most 60-year-olds, so I'm gonna run a marathon. Not saying you should. I'm saying don't let age define you. You don't doesn't mean you have to go out and run that marathon. I'm saying change your mindset. So if you're saying, yeah, I could run that marathon and age doesn't define me, then doesn't mean you have to go out, but change your diet, get healthier in other ways. That's what I mean by age doesn't defy you. It doesn't always have to be, oh, I'm gonna go swim across the United from the United States to the UK or run a Boston Marathon. Nope. If most people your age aren't taking care of themselves, start eating better. So age doesn't define you in anything. If you're a horrible lover, then work at getting better. It doesn't define you. Another one is you obviously as you're going, you get more life experience. You have more life experience as you're getting it, right? So not only as you're in your 20s and to your 30s, you learn something. From your 30s to your 40s, you learn something. From your 40s to your 50s, from your 30s to your 40s, you learn something. And then from your 50s to your 60s and so on until you die, right? But in every one of those progressions, you use what you learn to kind of mold your life and better your life for the most part. Not in all cases, but for the most part. That's the way you kind of do it, through experience, through just the trial and error, because you've heard it enough. There's no blueprint to whatever you're looking for. There's no blueprint to anything. You just have to do it. So you just have to do it. You have to experience it. You have to lose it all. You have to feel it all. You have to whatever it all. Sadly. I mean, it's just the cold truth. But from that, if you have the right mindset, if you have the correct attitude towards it and understanding that it's just a natural process, but you grab the knowledge and you apply it to the self-betterment of your life quality, that's a plus. That's a definite plus. And that's how men should be applying it to their lives, and the wisdom you've gained, right? Because that goes along with as life experience, you actually learn like wisdom. And I've talked to many people my age and a little bit older, and I've known them through the process and they weren't that wise, but maybe they had a death, maybe they had a separation, maybe they did get the dream job, maybe they do have the perfect relationship. They learned, and I've seen them from going from no wisdom to having all the answers, all the keys, because you see the fruits of their labor, or as we all do. We're all a representation of our efforts at that time. So no matter where you are in your life right now, your efforts led you to there. So I could only speak for myself, and it's led me to where I am today. I'm not going to go into detail about my personal life, but it's led me to here in my effort. So if I've had poor effort, then I've had poor results. And if I've had great effort, then my life should reflect it. So you see it from people, and I've seen it firsthand. So it's one of the things that we should all be looking forward to getting, just some of that wisdom that we're going to gain, and we're also going to gain from other people as they gain wisdom along with us, and how we meet them in life. And that's nothing but a positive to a better thinking male species, and again, especially here in America. I think I wrote here, if you map it out, one of the things, if you can map it out young, you can benefit it for the rest of your life. And you hear this, and you don't hear this enough in schools, but you should hear it, and you're hearing it more on social media, and that's a positive, but not enough. But definitely in financing. If they start with habit of saving money and investing and building some kind of financial portfolio, especially when they don't have dependents, when they don't have all these other pressing issues that we call life, then the quicker you do that, you're only gonna benefit later on in life, and you'll be better off, and so glad that you listened to someone and actually did that work. Just because money and having a stress of money is the biggest obstacle to everything, not just the one aspect, to everything. It's just the way it is. You can't raise a farm of goats and bargain them for a position and whatever, or fewer taxes. You sadly can't do that. So it is just the way it is. But if you map out, and especially in that one aspect, especially like I said, in financing, they could benefit. But if you also do it in your relationships with your boundaries early on in your youth, then the quality of friends, your quality of relationships with your family is only going to be that much better, and it's going to set you up for better success further down the line. So if you always expect to have a certain standard of friends, and I'm not saying be snobby and all my people around me have to be best, but just having people with integrity, people that are loyal, people that are dependable, people that are hardworking, people that have the same vision as you. If you start doing that, even in your teens, your 20s, your 30s, you're gonna start seeing that fruit. I mean, you see it. You see it, and and the old me was kind of infuriating. But when I think about it, I had that shit too with my friends, as to get on and put us all on, put us all on the map. And you see it, especially in YouTube. You see it with some of the influencers, where they have a network of creators underneath them, and they did it through having quality of, I want friends that are like-minded and that are on the same path, and they've known these people since junior high school, and through that process they've attracted like-minded people that are adapting to them as them, or to the person as they are getting older, and adapting because they keep that same level of standards for themselves in their life. Am I saying they're perfect? It's a great model, no. But if you start early, and you understand what you're comfortable with, what you're accepting, what you're not accepting, and you do that in your 16s and your 20s, or when you're teens, I meant 16s, or I meant to say 16 to 20. If you start doing that then, and have a standard, you're only going to benefit, because again, your relationship with your family and the quality of friends that you will have incurred will be amazing. And you're seeing it. You might not want to see it, or you might not be paying attention, but you're definitely seeing it. And to be honest, we see it a lot in hip hop, when you see certain record labels, like they came up, but they brought up all their homies and stuff, and it's the same kind of process. When you see it, they set up their homies to be successful, or to at least try to be successful in their own right. Many failed, but some didn't. But they set themselves up with the right people that they got brought up in that same mindset, right? They help them achieve a vision. Not saying whatever dynamic it is in the group concept is individual, and I can't speak to that for the most part. But if you could understand to lay that groundwork early, for your financial groundwork, your friendship groundwork, your relationship with your family groundwork, your diet groundwork, your exercise, groundwork, all that stuff. If the sooner you could do that, the sooner you figure that out, the sooner you understand that, the better everyone around you is going to be. But forget everyone around you, just the better quality of man that you will be. Oh, another one is more money. Obviously, as we get older, statistically and according to the data, the older you get, the more you are worth, up to a certain point, obviously. But you do end up incurring more money. And again, if you set it up right from the beginning, the benefits of you just increasing your income yearly, decade by decade, again, only sets you for great wealth for you, for your family. It sets you up for what you want to do, to have financial freedom, to be able to explore and live a fulfilling life. So it is definitely one of the more knowns. Like, yeah, as I get older, I'm going to earn more. So of course, I'm just going to have more money. I'm going to have a house. It's not guaranteed by any means. You definitely have to do the work, like with anything. But you definitely, one of the perks and one of the more well-knowns is that you just get money. And the one that I kind of hinted at the end, which is statistically true though, 27% of younger women ages between 18 and 27, I think 27 will sound like I just made it up, even though it is 27. But let's just say 18 to 28 for this argument, just to not 27% and have it from 8 to 27. But if you're an older male in your 40s and 50s, 27% of younger women ages 18 to 28 become automatically attracted to you, statistically speaking, for the most part. If you believe in hypergamy, you could attribute it to that. Whatever you attribute to that stat, you attribute it to that. But statistically speaking, 27%. So that can't be a bad thing, you know. So as you build that money, you develop that life experience, you have that wisdom. It's one of the reasons why older men become so intrigued and so exciting. And I even kind of broke it down to you as to some of the things that you should look forward to. And it should be an encouraging, not that women are the be all end all, but it's one of the perks that you do if you set the foundation right, so you reap the rewards later on in life. Again, many get rewarded early on, and that's great. Some in the middle, that's great. Some in the end, that's great. But we want to do it when it's just about right for the general public, for the normal people. You're gonna have this normal progression, and you want to do it right because you're gonna have the progression no matter what. You might as well try to lay the foundation correctly. And just the last point is just have a good outlook. Have a great outlook in getting older. Having a positive attitude to getting older is key, you know, and not leaving it to chance and taking as much as we can by the horns, as they say, and take control of it and set it to a path where we want to see it, as opposed to letting the path dictate to us where we're actually going to go. So having that and having a positive outlook and not leaving anything or as much as you can to chance, because chance is chance. There's always a chance that something's gonna happen. So but try not to leave it to chance on everything. Only on certain things, but try to control as much as you can. If you have bad habits, change them and just embrace it. Us as men, we're adaptable. That's one of our greatest strengths, and we need to be able to adapt that into our mindset and into our psyche, and definitely into our consciousness, to embrace getting old in a positive way. And no matter where you are in your life, whether young, in the middle, or at the end, if you still have breath and can take control of any aspect of your life and learn from that moment on, is nothing but a positive. And you can't do nothing but live whatever amount of time you have in a richer state. So embrace it. It's going to happen. So let's age gracefully. Let's lay the foundation for a healthy aging process. We fear getting old, but it shouldn't be the overwhelming emotion. We should look forward to getting old. There's a lot of beauty in getting old and aging, and we need more people to talk about that graceful aging, as opposed to the aging that they want to portray down our throats, I guess. But anyways, I hope you found this informative. If you like, share the video, like, subscribe. Until next time, thank you guys for listening.